Because quite honestly, and Jeff and you and I have talked about this a lot in the top 10, and I thought I usually enjoy when there's new characters introduced in comic books and they get hyped up and they sell, no matter the price, no matter if the price is that maybe they're selling for 10 or 15 or what, just knowing that they're moving, and it doesn't have to do necessarily with movie hype or spec or anything like that. I dig that, but what I think is going on, I actually think is something that we're seeing throughout the hobby and not just with new books. And I think there's two things going on. There's two things going on. One of them is emotional reactivity. So basically we become flooded with so much intense emotion of this desire that we almost, it's like we're getting aroused, and we become crippled by our impulsion. Okay. Which is, what does this sound like? It sounds like addiction, right? The second thing, and it correlates with the emotional reactivity, and that's hypervigilance. So, hypervigilance is often correlated to like trauma, and anxieties and these kind of negative things where, you take this fight or flight mentality. And I feel that FOMO, and Jeff and I before I've talked about, FOMO isn't inherently bad. I think there's good FOMO. I think it could be fun, but I think FOMO it becomes so healthy that it becomes a form of hypervigilance, and we put ourselves in this fight or flight scenario and access our fears of missing out to be like a threat to what drives us, similar to an addict fiending for their next fix. So it's like anything getting in our way, we become hypervigilant of it, and the fight or flight is like, back up, off. That's mine. And I need it. So similar, I mean, look, is an addict, and I'm not making light of drug, addicts and all that, because that's hit home personally for me. But you can have the dope man selling pounds of dope, right? But I guarantee you, if a fiend is coming up and wanting, all they want is that next hit. But if somebody is getting in the way of their next hit, maybe it's just because there's a line. I don't know if you've ever seen a line for the dope man, but just hypothetical here. Bear with me. I mean, play along, folks. Maybe there's just two people talking to the dope man, and that fiend, and he's like, I need my hit. Get out of my way. It's like, I need it, because it's that fight or flight. You don't see anything else other than your emotional reactivity to what it is that you desire. And it becomes completely reactionary. And we are almost not consciously, physically in the present moment in our bodies. And I do feel this is becoming very, very problematic. And I talked about this recently as well, where we don't allow demand to catch up with supply. Meaning, usually, if we truly demanded something, and we're in our right minds, we understand what it is that we want that's on the market. We gauge the market, and that allows us to make an autonomous, conscious decision to say, I'm willing to purchase this, or I want this at this set price. And we cap it. Or there might be a little bit of wiggle room. That's what happens in auctions, even if we're not FOMOing out. You may go a little bit higher, whatever. But we don't let that happen. And like I said earlier, what's the scenario of us not letting that happen? Well, you're up watching WandaVision at 12 a.m. and White Vision. Maybe you smoked a good one and you tipped a few back, and nobody was caring about putting a West Coast Avengers 45 up on eBay prior to this. So especially in a 9.8. So there's only one, or maybe there's a few raw books, and all you need is a handful of people sitting there at midnight, FOMOing it out. Emotional reactivity, right? and then this hypervigilant comes. I need it. And when that clock ticks down to those final 5 seconds, you know how eBay is. It's, you can put in your high bid manually, but then they also have the button like that automatically updates. So like if the bid is 10, you have a $12 button. And if you hit 12, it automatically goes up to 14. So literally 5 seconds, somebody can sit there like, because they want it so bad. And oh shit, that $12 is now $150 for that West Coast 45, man. So I'll just sum it up like this, man. I mean, I usually am very optimistic and I see the positives with comic books. I like when money comes into comic books because it makes the overall market healthy. That's why I say variants aren't ruining the hobby. Let people pay $200 for that 1 in 50, like whatever. Flippers aren't ruining the hobby. They're helping the primary market and secondary market. It all is what it is. But I have to take a stand this year and continue the context of how it is imperative that we get our behavior in check, because this is the one thing that I feel can cripple the market. That's it. It's not, I mean, it's not anything else. It's when we get so outside of ourselves and we aren't realizing what we're doing, and the FOMO becomes such an addiction. It's very concerning. Oh, I'll say one more thing too. I know I want you guys to have final word on this too. I don't want to end it without hearing more of your guys' thoughts, but I'm actually going to do a video on this whole topic. But just to briefly state it, I was watching. I'm in Whatnot constantly, just hanging out. I made a couple purchases, but usually I'm just hanging out. And one, I don't know. I tell you, there is so much misinformation in Whatnot sales. So much misinformation, but that's another topic. Somebody paid over $300 for a CBCS 9.8 back issue dollar bin $2-3 modern book in an auction. Now, to this buyer's, whatever, the seller did hype it up with some misleading information. But still, I'm seeing so much. And that's why, Bronze Age, that's why I was like, I think this theme is definitely still present across the board with a lot of different, types of comic books, whether it's era or, price point or anything. I am concerned. I am very, very concerned with how we are approaching our FOMO.
I haven't, I can relate to this, right? It's been, I've come to realize I have dealt with anxiety, depression my whole life, and anxiety has come into play a lot of the times. And I can look back on a lot of situations where anxiety has taken over. And I want to give you guys one story as an example. And this is, God, I don't remember what year it was, but it was G.I. Joe number 50. I was so hyped as a kid to get G.I. Joe number 50. Mm-hmm. I called Walden Books in the Concord Mall within an hour, probably 6 or 7 times to make sure that they still had it there, because I was taking a trip with my parents to the bookstore. I did not want to miss getting G.I. Joe number 50. It was like in my head, right? Front of mind. I had to get it no matter what. And I see these things today and I can relate that anxiety to that FOMO that's even more kind of enhanced with all the social media, with all of the tools that we have in hand, all of the blogs, all of the people on YouTube hyping things up. And it's kind of blown it completely up. Mm-hmm. And people like, me as that kid having to deal with something like that now, it would have been like, oh my God, Walden Books would have blocked my number, So
Fair assessment, man, for sure.
You got to get that first Zorana, man. I mean, that's a big deal.
I was dead set. I had to get that book, and I tell my we got to get to Walden Books before it sells out. And I got there. There was probably 30 issues there, 30 copies there. But it was just like I just remember what I'm trying to convey here is my mindset with that, right? Even though I was a kid, it still it exemplifies the FOMO before that was even called FOMO, the anxiety that relates to that, right? And how it becomes FOMO. So that's just my little kind of my personal story, like, because I can relate to all of what's going on here. I don't fall into that now. I know how to kind of deal with that, but I can see, I understand it.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, so for me, my angle on this is it's important to remember that as fans, we get excited.
Yeah.
And if some people are in comic collecting just for profit or those kinds of things or investment. That's fine if that's what they're into. But most of us are fans too.
Yep.
And when you're a fan, that's all baked in, that excitement.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're not careful, it can get unchecked.
Yep.
And that's where you really got to be careful in this whole, the great point about social media, people posting their hauls on Instagram, and then comparing themselves to others and what that person has in their collection, and watching, like Chris's point, like there's only so many books on eBay at a time. When that issue hits, and you go off and you try to grab the last one you can find, they're all getting snatched up. Even with the new books that happens, get that last copy of Black Panther 3 that's out on auction right now or whatever it is. That's a real potential issue for people, especially when, you brought it up too, Jeff. A lot of people that are collectors, tons of people I talk to, myself included, have had problems with anxiety, depression, or manic depressive bipolar. I'm not sure what the current kind of correct way to look at that is right now, but people that get in these buying sprees, like I'm going to buy this to make myself feel more whole or more complete. Yeah. That's a real problem. And you have to separate those two things as a fan. And that's why I recommend like making a list of things like these are the books I care about. And already what that list is, that kind of stuff. There's different strategies, but if you start to notice that you have a problem with that, you're spending too much time on whatnot, too much time on eBay, you're getting a little too excited, a little too amped up, really good time for a reality check. And I think we all could use that from time to time.
Well, that's Absolutely. Well said. Really well said. It's like kind of checking yourself, right? Because at some point it gets unhealthy. Yeah. And there are certain people that don't notice that it gets past the point that it's unhealthy. And that's where you should be worried. But you're right. Like you see all these people holding up 5 copies of an issue. Be like, look what I got. And it's like, shit, I got to go out and get it, So I completely understand that. Yeah. Anyways, this is this is a lot right here. Actually, this is our most heavy kind of top 10 hottest comics of the week.
I told you, I warned Jeff. I do want to say too, though, and to Bronze Age's point, like this is serious. I mean, it's serious. I'm not mocking it or making any light of it. This is serious, and what makes it even more detrimental or problematic to the comic book industry in general is it's becoming so normalized subconsciously where we don't even think about it. This is a cultural issue at this point. It is and all the things that both of you brought up. I mean, mental illness is a cultural issue, status, social status is a cultural issue, fitting in, all these things. And then social media has just added to that flames. I mean, we post stuff to get, how many hearts did we get, to fuel that. And people don't realize what's going on in here and all the endorphins going off. And then we realize why we can't detach from our phones or, from social media, because it's like now we don't realize how to get endorphins from doing normal things in life. So, but on another level too, the way it normalizes this is that it even normalizes this behavior, normalizes the inability to gauge what we really believe that we should pay for comic books. And I'm not saying because I'm so anti-market manipulation. People throw that word out way too much. This isn't anybody manipulating the market. And I don't even like to say that this isn't organic, because what does organic mean? You know, it's still organic in the sense that we are making autonomous decisions. Nobody's still putting a gun to our head and telling us to have FOMO and buy this and freak out and mine. You know, a lot of rash and reasonable collectors still aren't fully educated. Maybe they watch YouTubers and they're trying to be, you know, they're not FOMOing out, or they're not, you know, reactionary, but maybe they're just, oh, I'm listening to this guy and he's saying that this book is increasing by this much or whatever. And, you know, people misunderstand what scarcity means or rarity means. And then they go into their buying decision and they're thinking that they understand the data, and they're thinking that looking at the last high sale is appropriate thing to do when you're budgeting to invest or collect comic books. And then they pay these high prices and they're not even FOMOing. And again, so at the end of the day, there's so many areas and factors of how this is very troubling and unsettling for me. Like I said, I'm gonna be talking about this all year long. Only time will tell to see if we can see some changes one way or the other. I don't know.